Hey, and welcome to another episode of the Blue Screen Brothers, again directly from Redmond. This time actually Redmond, not Seattle. We are in building number 122.
Today, yes.
Today we're in building 122, and with me I have my colleague Anders and Brian from last episode. Hello.
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 Hello again.
If I'm not mistaken, we are going to talk about history. We're going to talk about mainframes.
It's always good to bring a little history into context.
Because Anders mentioned here that he loves mainframes, but you, on the other hand here, Brian, you prefer to, you moved your mainframe from your basement to the cloud.
Absolutely, yes.
So I would really like to see how this plays out between Anders having his mainframe in the garage while you having your in the cloud. Who of you is going to win? Because there's different strategies here. We all heard about server-client shift from the mainframe, and then we moved from server-client to have thin clients and hosts, and then back to client and cloud. But the cloud PC, what would you label the cloud PC as? Is it a server-client? Is it a mainframe? Or is it just a workstation in the cloud?
I think of it as a workstation in the cloud. I think of it as, hey, instead of having a physical PC that I have to carry around with me and maintain and be very careful with, my PC is actually sitting in the server data center along with all the other things that I'm using on a very high-speed connection with OneDrive and all the other cloud services that I utilize being almost instantaneously accessible from my PC rather than wherever I am and whatever internet connection I happen to have and all of the traffic I need to send up and come down from home or wherever I am on the road. That's all sitting in the cloud. So I think of it as a workstation in the cloud that I then access. And today, it feels like the PC is local because we can bring the display and all of the output from that PC very efficiently and quickly so that it feels like the PC is local, but it's really sitting in the cloud.
And you mentioned earlier, Anders, something about privileged access workstation. We love those three-letter acronyms, right? The PVA.
Yep.
So why do people use PVA, and why do you want to move that to the cloud?
PAW is basically a workstation that's supposed to be a very tight, secure device, and it's only supposed to be used by, in at least my experience, tier 0 access for managing your tenant, basically.
And what's a tier 0?
Tier 0 is kind of God mode, if you have...
God mode, all right, we're back there.
Yeah,
right.
Most likely people can relate to God mode.
Right. So very few people within a company, that's...
Yeah, and a PAW should be having probably the most strictest conditional access policies, such as normally should require two-factor passkeys, and even if your company have global secure access, it also should have a compliant with GSA.
But what about enrolling your device? So you need to access your cloud PC in one way or another, if it is by a phone, a Windows 365 link, or your Surface. Let's say that you just went out to the company store here in Microsoft, bought yourself a cloud, your Copilot Plus PC, your Surface, and then you just open it up and use it for personal. Could I connect my personal device to Windows 365?
To 365, I guess yes, but not a PAW. Accessing a PAW should be from an enrolled device for sure.
But what are the other use cases here? Because you mentioned PAW. What are you seeing people use those cloud PCs for, Brian?
Well, there's a large number of benefits to cloud PC that make it easy on organizations. So one example is if you have vendors, contractors that come in and do temporary work or are short-term, where you wouldn't ordinarily be issuing a PC, or if you were issuing a PC, it was quite a hassle to get that physical PC into the hands of the person who needed it. With a cloud PC, you don't need to worry about what the end user contractor is using to access your corporate network. You can have complete control over the cloud PC, issue them a cloud PC, and they can use their personal device to access that cloud PC and do the operations where the cloud PC is on your network. It has access to your data. You can control that data. You can control that access. And the user can be on their personal laptop and accessing those resources.
And
and you can then you have like an air-gapped system, and you can also set conditional access policy on those remote workers. Like, okay, these remote workers should not be logging in during night, for example, if that's a requirement, or if you want to have that kind of level of certainty, you can do all that kind of stuff.
I heard about engineering company that would standardize their laptop pool. So they would like i5, long life battery, semi 16 gigs of memory. But some of their users were high compute users. But they spent too much time on petting on high perform computers on premises.
Mm-hmm.
So they would like them to just sign into a standardized laptop and just up the performance by having a cloud PC. Do you see a lot of users for that?
Absolutely. I think having the ability to scale smartly what the capabilities of those cloud PCs might be during times when you have a need for them to be is also a huge advantage. Whereas having a super excellent GPU on your local machine, only one person is benefiting from that, and they may not be using it all of the time. Whereas if you put it in the cloud and you say, okay, I'm going to give multiple users access to this, or I might give you access to the GPU during the seasonality where you need access to a GPU, and you're still accessing it from a less expensive device, that reduces costs for the physical device, because if that device fails for some reason, it's quite expensive to replace it. Whereas in the cloud, it's fairly easily to re-provision a new cloud PC if someone needs a new cloud PC.
One of my favorite stories is that a lot of the security features that is built in both the hardware of the Surface devices, but also the operating system of Windows, comes from Xbox. And I come to think of that the cloud PC also comes from Xbox. And for those of you who haven't tried it, the cloud gaming is actually a quite neat performance feature. And you can compare that. You have an Xbox, but you don't want to download and install the application or game on your Xbox. You just boot it directly from the cloud, so it's streamed from a data center. But you also have the feature that if you have a smart TV from Samsung, LG, or whoever vendor, you just need a remote control, the Xbox hand control, and it simply boots the game without a console at all. We would be able to see, wait, that's called Windows 365 Link, right?
Yes, it is. It's very similar to what you just described. I think it's more aimed at business users. Obviously, it's not a consumer-oriented device like an Xbox, but it's certainly a purpose-built device for accessing cloud PCs very efficiently and easily and inexpensively.
Yeah, but we have kind of these scenarios within our company as well, Alexander, because in our company we have a certain program that is old, and we have a data.
It's aged, not old, aged.
It's kind of somewhat legacy, but that runs towards an Oracle database, right? And that old program, that is so chatty that it requires very, very low latency to the database. And if you have used your own computer with that program installed locally, your latency would simply be too high. So we needed there to just bring the AVD close to the proximity group of the Oracle database, and then you get a latency of 2 milliseconds on each of these calls, which is impossible with your normal bandwidth.
I heard about latency before. Last time we really talked about latency was when people were gaming, Counter-Strike and everything. They talked about ping. But 2 milliseconds, is that good? Is that a good thing?
2 milliseconds is pretty good because the normal is 4 if you don't have proximity groups, so it's pretty low.
There's a lot of different applications for having a cloud PC located in a low latency, high bandwidth environment like a data center. Things like manipulating video, where you need to move bits around quite a bit, benefit from being on the backbone, if you will, where you're not having to upload video and then download video across a small pipe. You have this giant fast internet connection, so you can move things around very quickly and get things done much more efficiently. And that's another advantage to having a cloud PC, where the PC itself is sitting in that data center where it has the really high bandwidth and low latency.
One of the favorite features when it comes to cloud PC, and just to make it clear, cloud PC, is that one thing, or is that, because sometimes people say AVD, sometimes people say Windows 365. So what is cloud PC?
Well, it really goes back to virtualization, but I think that's a word that evokes kind of older technology. Cloud PC, I think, is the concept of, hey, I can manage this virtual machine as if it were a PC. So I can enroll it in Intune, and as an Intune admin, I don't need to think differently about how I manage my devices. I can roll out a cloud or deploy a cloud PC the same way that I deploy a physical PC and treat it very similarly and be able to catalog it and keep track of it in the same way. Whereas AVD is similar, but it requires a lot more sophistication, more complexity. It still can do some of the same things, but it does mean an investment in some IT folks who understand and can do the back-end complex work that needs to be done to set up AVD and keep AVD going. Whereas Windows 365 is just so simple that any person that can use Intune can use Windows 365 to deploy PCs. They don't have to think about all the virtual machines and servers and all those things that you have to do with AVD.
Worker pools and all that kind of
Exactly.
settings.
Yeah, because it's super neat that you can, first of all, you can let your work PC stay at home or in the office, but you can take your super smooth, fast, lightweight tablet and just pop it up and use work resources from wherever you are.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the features that I really love that is under-communicated is the Windows 365 switch. And the feeling of that is that you simply just swipe from right to left on a Windows device, and then you switch from your local desktop to Cloud PC desktop. Have you seen a lot of adoption? Do you see that people are using multiple devices differently, or is it this business as usual?
I think more people need to learn about some of the advantages to having a second PC in the cloud or your primary PC in the cloud. I don't think enough people really yet have started to be aware of all those capabilities. I think that's changing. We're definitely seeing a huge growth in Windows 365, and more companies are looking at it and seeing the value of maybe switching some of their virtual devices over to Windows 365 for that reason, because it really simplifies on the desktop the ability to switch from maybe working locally to working on a cloud PC, or just logging in immediately to your cloud PC and just using the local machine as the terminal. I use some of these words like terminal, like it's decades old to have a dumb terminal that goes to the server, but we're still in that same kind of mode where we have a thin client. That's another word that we often use,
Citrix,
right? And I think more people are seeing the benefits of the mental switch of that enables is, and the other thing too, I think that for me was the biggest eye opener coming from many years of going back into, I'm old. So I have experienced I've experienced many different types of client server computing, but to me the snappiness of logging into your cloud PC, it doesn't feel like it's somewhere else. It feels like it's local. It's not like remote desktop where there's sometimes latency, but even if the remote desktop machine is right next to you, it felt like there was some latency when you were trying to do a remote desktop session. Whereas with Windows 365, there's a lot of work that's been done to make that feel very snappy. You can even do Teams calls on your Windows 365 PC in the cloud from your wherever you are, and that to me is what is the big eye opener, is all the work that's been done to make that a much more efficient process and it feels really snappy.
Yeah, it's actually the same snappiness when it comes to using Windows Sandbox, which is a very underutilized tool set in my mind that people should be aware of. You can basically install it as a feature, and you can treat it as a disposable instance of Windows, basically. For example, in my case, as investigations, phishing mails has been coming pretty good, and they're using Cloudflare for protection. So you basically have to kind of detonate the phishing link yourself, because you have to do this gap that checks, because it's protected by Cloudflare and also location based. So you have to kind of detonate the link and see, okay, what's actually behind this phishing link. And then you can just spin up a Windows 11 sandbox and do that, and you can just press X and it's gone after.
Being a virtualization expert, would you define Sandbox as a developer tool or security tool? I'm struggling there.
I would say both. I would
Both.
say both. Yeah, certainly from a developer perspective, if you're developing software, you want to be able to test multiple different deployments and environments, and being able to reproduce those every time you go through your test suite is important. So I think a sandbox is definitely dev-oriented, but it's also very security-oriented. I think that great example of you need to isolate yourself so that you can detonate your link. I love that expression. I think it's totally appropriate within that controlled environment, so you're not actually destroying an environment that you've worked meticulously to set up.
Yeah, Olav, who's going to edit this podcast and distribute it, he used the word implode on that because it doesn't explode. Because when you detonate that link, nothing shrapnels from that sandbox into your environment.
I like that.
It implodes because there's no remains in your environment. So there's a big difference between. So you do detonate it. That's I agree on that. But it implodes. It does not explode. So it doesn't leave any trace of any malware or anything. So all right, you took the easy way out. It's both. It's both security and developer.
There's both.
Yeah, but is there any way that if Sandbox is the easy, snappy way, it takes about 8 to 10 seconds to boot a Sandbox, but is there any way that you can use Windows 365 as a Sandbox tool as well?
I wouldn't necessarily use the word sandbox in this
Don't ruin
situation,
this. Don't ruin this.
Right. But yes, Windows 365, you can create your own custom image. Put that image into the gallery of images that you have at your disposal to provision your cloud PCs, and then it's very easy to re-provision a cloud PC from scratch based on that image. So you can easily do that. If you need to have a controlled environment, a Windows environment, then Windows 365 can do that. I think more commonly it's used to say I have a golden image or a standard operating environment that I deploy. Nod to my any Australian listeners who use those SOE and golden image terms all the time. If I have that standard environment, I can create an image and then deploy all of my Windows 365 cloud PCs based on that image. So it does have a very similar, and there's definitely a similarity there.
But would it be equally easy to kind of kill one of those instances or redeploy it easy when Anders have deployed, destroyed?
Yeah, so that reminds me of the snapshots. I can't remember the exact term we use now. I'm blanking on it, but it's essentially the snapshots in time so that you can roll back. I hesitate to bring up the CrowdStrike incident.
We are there. All right.
But those who were using Windows 365 cloud PCs were very easy. It was very easy for them to roll back to the previous snapshot and continue from there when that happened. So that's a great example of you can take snapshots of the virtual machine and then recover from incidents like that. So.
But I think it should be a bit, you shouldn't usually use it as a sandbox, I think, because a 365 cloud PC is actually connected in some way, right? So if you kind of detonate a link and actually log in with your account, you don't know what's happening, right? So I don't think you should do it from a security perspective, because then you can actually have some real impact if it's connected.
Yeah, you really don't know how those, because that's the next level of crap. You have a link and you don't know what's on the other side of that link. And if you assume that that's I love you email, you're wrong. There's going to be a new next generation of crap being detonated on that. And you don't know how that's going to be exploiting your connections. So that's a very good point.
Yep.
Assume that whatever you detonate is a new type of crap that we've never seen before. So Sandbox is probably the better choice here.
Yeah.
I always carry like 15 separate surfaces that is separated from everything. So I always use a separate offline device for that.
Yeah, but not everyone is like you though. Unlimited surfaces.
But from a virtualization perspective, one of the problems that we have with physical devices is patching both the UEFI and managing the boot. That is still existing in the virtualization environment in AVD. but you are not dealing with that as an IT. That's dealt with by Microsoft, by the hypervisor provider.
For Windows 365, for sure.
Yeah, and for AVD?
I'm not an expert there, so you're getting a little too far in the weeds for me on the AVD side.
I recall you don't have the BIOS in AVD, I think, because that doesn't make sense because it's virtualized.
Yeah, so you pretty much just you use it as PaaS, PC as a service or platform as a service, so you don't need to deal with the hardware layer. So there are benefits when it comes to device management and patch management. So the Windows 365, just imagine here, the Windows 365 link, you don't have to deal with the software and patching and stuffy.
Exactly.
And then you have an operating system that simply is dealt with by Microsoft. And then you have the operating system that you patch yourself. But we have a kind of we're now seeing March 23rd. And we got about 10 months of happiness until the end of life of something special.
Not 10 months. I think it's a little less than that.
A little less than 10 months. So, yeah. And we are going to see some changes on how people are, because organizations can't replace like thousands of clients just to be compliant. Do you see any requests that people would like to use a Windows 10 device to boot into Windows 365 instead of replacing the device?
Absolutely. There's a lot of advantages to using it for that purpose, to quickly move a group of people into Windows 11 and maintain their existing hardware, at least for a little bit more. The value actually to that, if you do it that way, is that we're currently making that very easy, giving you some support for that device if it is connecting to a cloud PC running Windows 11. So ask your local Microsoft seller about that. But I think that's a really great example of one of the things that companies who might be struggling with coming up with their end of Windows 10 end of support moment and what to do about it. That could be one tool in the toolbox for them to quickly move to Windows 11 is using cloud PCs, and there's quite a few use cases where that makes a lot of sense.
So to round up, there are a lot of use case scenarios. If you have third-party vendors or customers or contractors, you have sandboxing simulations and latencies issues. But how to sound up all?
Well, there is actually one other scenario too that we haven't really mentioned, which is frontline workers and the ability to share a PC either through shift workers or literally sharing a device. So there are other scenarios that cloud PCs can be really beneficial. I mean, certainly in the frontline worker space, you have the potential for lots of breakage, lots of physical devices. If you were deploying physical devices to all of those, it would be very challenging to keep all those devices up to date, deploying them to the people, making sure, I mean, you're talking about a very dynamic workforce. So having a cloud PC makes that really simple, and then enabling them to log into the cloud PC. So Windows 365 Link is a great example of a device that could enable that very easily on a shop floor, on a manufacturing floor. I won't mention any examples right now, but there are some great examples this week that we'll be talking about.
That we will not be talking about.
Yeah.
Oh no! I think there will be public knowledge at some point in the near future about some of these great examples of using Windows 365 Link in very great ways.
And hear a future podcast here.
Yeah. There's probably there might even be an expert that you'll see later this week that would be willing to tell you even more about it.
Yeah.
I recall the demo I saw from Link was pretty tight secured as well from the shipment, built-in security in the device.
Yeah, I think you're touching on a subject that's probably worth its own podcast, but the whole supply chain security is super, super important these days, and making sure that the device has been under your control or secure control from the chip all the way to your hands is very important, and Windows 365 Link is no exception to that. And certainly that's a mantra for Surface as well. It's secure from chip to cloud, and that includes supply chain security as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So, well, if you haven't tried it, there are available demos for Windows 365 links and no, Windows 365. The links will be available for the US market and what other markets soon?
Oh, you would ask me that off of my mind. I believe the UK, the US, Australia, Japan.
And more markets coming
And
soon?
more markets coming soon.
Yeah.
Check the website for the latest markets available today.
Yeah, so go out and try it out for yourself. Thank you, guys.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you.